one would have expected that the governor of Ekiti State, Abiodun Yebanji, should be the one talking and doing all it takes to see that these guys nip in the bud. Because for over 2 years now, the people of Ekiti North, especially Yemaro, Ikwali, and the likes, have not had peace and have continued to live in fear. And it was just in January the governor gave a mandate on checkmating scavengers' activities to avoid possible security threats. Just today also, news filtered in that 9 surveyors adopted in Akure North local government area of Ondo State have regained their freedom. The governor's doing enough individually, or would you say they have slept for too long?
Well, I think the people of Ekiti and the people of Ondo should speak at the next election cycle. Unfortunately, Ondo just had an election and they seem to have endorsed the government. So perhaps the people of Ondo feel that their own government is deserving of a re-election. But there's a recurring decimal in the places you mentioned. Travel to some of this community. How many security checkpoints would you see? Security is essentially about logistics. If you don't supply the fighting forces the logistics, they can't take the fight, they can't patrol, they cannot dominate their area of responsibility. You can't ask the law enforcement to go bare-chested or go with nails or their fingernails or their bare hands to fight some of these activities. So the question is how much investment, and the subnational governments must come to the fore. So I do not see, based on the hard facts on the ground, that some governments, particularly in the ones you have mentioned, are doing enough. The reports on ground will suggest they are not doing enough, really. If some of the security agencies in the state tell you how much these governments are issuing to them in terms of logistic support or vehicles, you can look at Zamfara, for example. You can look at the FCT. Recall that the FCT had issues. I know you want to focus on the Southwest, but let's see, what is Zamfara doing correctly? What is the FCT doing correctly? The FCT in recent time has invested a lot in logistics. Logistics. That's the lifeline of any force. You need to be able to carry your people from point A to point B. They need to do patrol. They need to dominate the area. The other thing also is in terms of investment in infrared sensing drones that can give you day and night capability. These equipments are not particularly expensive. I read a report showing that Nigeria now gives to some states ×3 of their allocation, to some states ×2. In places like Ekiti and Ondo, where you have heavy vegetation, the Air Force or the police helicopters are not able to, because of the vegetation and the coverage of these trees, to see what's happening in some places where these issues are prevalent. In places like Akoko Edo, for example, or in some of those farm settlements. So people take the advantage of terrain and topography, perpetrate their dastardly act, and they just fade away into the forest. So there's not enough investment in equipment, and sometimes I worry about the quality of the leadership we have. How much of security do these chief security officers themselves know? I have had to make a case that governors should go to Kuru, to the National Institute of Policy, and have a course work for them on national security, national defense, and national interest. Because for too long, you have chief executive officers who have to make the decision and call the shots, even when they are provided with actionable intelligence. Sometimes the decisions they make are sometimes, just for lack of better word, not what they should be. So
and you also wonder where the huge amount of money budgeted for security goes to. Because, over a year ago, stakeholders and groups in and across Yoruba land, Afenifere, for instance, has tasked President Bola Tinubu to summon the necessary political will to arrest the increasing insecurity of the country by convening community stakeholders, to tackle these insecurity challenges. At this moment, how do we tighten our loose end?
Yeah, I don't think that call is necessary for Mr. President. I think we need to educate ourselves at the states as to what the expectation should be. Let us stop looking to Abuja for our security. The president cannot be responsible for internal security in the state. That is an aberration, and I've made this point sufficiently clear. What I do agree, however, is that the president may want to convey, because there's a National Security Council in which the governor sits and the president sits, subnationals and the president sits. Let the president find that will to charge the governors and find a way to hold them to account. There's some thought leadership that the president needs to do. Put them in a room, show them the statistics from the government security agencies, show them the states that are failing, find out what the issues are, and let all the parties come together and find a will to address the problem. The problem we have in the states is that we are not holding, you will never find people protest sufficiently for the issue of insecurity. You may find some women in some small communities, nobody's holding these chief security officers to account. And they are the political leaders of each of the states. The governors can mobilize, I always say, to win an election. They can conscientize the people, their party, and mobilize the entire state and the resources of the state to winning an election. But when it comes to the issue of insecurity, it's always amazing the way we take life in Nigeria as if we don't take it very seriously. So the governors are not doing enough, and how we got here is that they're not doing. So what we need to close very quickly is to close the accountability. We must begin to hold the governors to account for the issues of insecurity in their states. Let me give you a case in point. Look at Anambra State. Look at Abia State. When these governors came in, they took the fight head on because they clearly in their mind understood that without security, you cannot have prosperity. You cannot also have economic development. So the first thing on the plate, in fact, Governor Soludo did invest a lot of his political goodwill on the matter of insecurity. And today, most of us can travel with some relative peace in those states. Look at what Governor Babagana Zulum is doing in Maiduguri. That again comes back to the political will. So this issue of Ekiti and Ondo, without mincing words, we have to beam the searchlight again on the governors, and I would charge journalists to have a sit down on the issue of insecurity because it's becoming a bit of a recurring decimal. You travel through those states to the remote areas, you are not seeing the presence of law enforcement. You are not seeing them dominate. In some of these states, the State Security Council meeting does not hold on a regular basis. Sometimes for 4 or 5 months, they don't have meeting. And the governor and the constitution says that security of life and property shall be the primary responsibility of government. What more can a government be doing without holding State Security Council meetings? So again, these are some of the issues, and that's where we need to look at, and that's what we need to close.
So guys, my take on this is just a question. Everyone is saying that the people should hold their governors and their leaders, political leaders, responsible for every insecurity that is going on. But they are not telling the people on how to hold the governors accountable. And that should be the question. That should be the teaching. They should be teaching the people. That should be what they should be discussing. Not about holding governors accountable, holding political leaders accountable. How can they hold them accountable? The only people that we see over the years that have been able to hold their leaders accountable are the Igbos. And when you see what is going on there, you will discover that it is not palatable at all. Even the leaders they are trying to hold accountable, they are not taking it lightly with the people they are pretending to be leading, which they are not leading. All right. So how can they take these governors accountable? How can they hold them accountable? How can they call them to order? How can they speak to power when there are oppression, when no one is doing anything good, when the judiciary is corrupt, when there are so many corruption in every sphere of every government? How can they hold their governors accountable? This is my question, all right? So please drop your thoughts right there in the comment section.